Sa mundong waring walang puwang para sa kanilang pagmamahalan, sapat pa ang tibok ng kanilang mga puso upang bumuo ng daigdig nilang sarili. Inihahandog ng Eagle Broadcasting Corporation ang kauna-unahang romantic teleserye ng Net25. Ang daigdig ko'y ikaw. Tuwing Sabado, ika-8 ng gabi, dito lamang sa Net25.
At ako'y laging sa'yo hanggang magpakailanman.
Sa ating paglalaro sa basketball, mayroon tayong gagamitin na rules. Foul! Minsan, hindi natin sinasadya, nakakasakit na pala tayo, kaya iniiwan tayo. Traveling! Masarap mag-travel, lalo't kasama mo siya. Pero, kasama mo nga siya, iba namang nasa isip niya. Out of bounds! Masaya sa simula, may hangganan din pala. Substitution! Meron tayo, substitution. Pwede kang pumalit sa lugar niya, pero huwag mong kakalimutan, kaibigan ka lang niya. Time out! Pwede kayo magpahinga, nakakapagod na, kapag pinaglalaroan ka.
Uy! Nandiyan pala kayo ha. Gusto ko lang ipaalam sa inyo na meron ng EVC Films dyan sa YouTube. Kaya ano pang hinihintay ninyo? Mag-subscribe na!
Factual,
We have to defeat the virus everywhere.
timely information, balanced, not only in the country, but also abroad.
I'm certain of one thing.
Interviews that people need to know. Watch Agila Pilipinas! A 1-hour newscast of reports coming from regional hubs in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Know the important updates in Asia in ASEAN in Focus. Track the latest stories in the provinces in Agila Provincia.
Sa mga taga-Iloilo at Antique, mapiyang
Tune into Mata ng Agila, the evening primetime news program of Net25. Balanced and objective, Mata ng Agila covers national and international issues, tackles news on business, health, science and technology, entertainment, sports and human interest features, and current events. And Eagle News International delivers the latest global reports, impartial, accessible, and up-to-date. It brings to fore EBC's rich international scope and access to valuable information streams.
Well, thank you to explain our health outdoor attack.
Catch these programs on Net25. You can also watch our news programs through eaglenews.ph and Eagle News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
This program is brought to you by Be Big Premium and Protect Plus Gold. Sama-sama sa laban, walang iwanan. SMC Infrastructure, building a better world.
Hello, Malma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International.
And I'm CJ here. Welcome to the program. Now on tonight's headlines.
The United States kicks off a mass vaccination drive, hoping to turn the tide on the world's biggest coronavirus outbreak as the country's death toll passes a staggering 300,000.
Joe Biden said that U.S. democracy proved resilient against Donald Trump's abuse of power after the Electoral College confirmed him as the next president.
And Russian President Vladimir Putin congratulated Joe Biden on winning the U.S. presidential election in November, saying he hoped the countries could set aside their differences to promote global security.
And finally, thousands of people turned their heads to the sky to watch a solar eclipse that lasted around 2 minutes as southern Chile and Argentina were plunged into darkness.
And we start with the pandemic. Americans today are getting COVID-19 vaccines, and not a moment too soon. The U.S. has 300,000 dead as vaccine doses rolled out and sleeves rolled up. Take a look.
It was an emotional experience working on the front lines alongside my team. I saw a lot of pain, hurt, suffering, death, and so I felt a huge sense of relief after I got the vaccine. I was not nervous. So as I've mentioned before, I trust the science, so I had no hesitation when I was asked if I would take the vaccine. I've been waiting for this day for.
In Washington, Secretary of Health and Human Services Alex Azar hailed the start of the largest vaccination campaign in U.S. history.
I trust the science, so I.
Americans by the end of this year, 20 million Americans could be vaccinated. By the end of January, 50 million Americans could have had a first vaccination. By the end of February, what you saw today could be replicated 100 million times, 100 million shots in arms between the first and booster vaccine. At 95% efficacy, this vaccine is extraordinarily effective at protecting you from the virus. Getting vaccinated will help keep you, your family, and your country healthy and safe.
On Sunday, the federal government utilized the military in part and began distributing BioNTech vaccine, 2.9 million doses initially, and they will reach 145 sites by the end of Monday, more than 600 locations by Wednesday, and by next Sunday, more than 1,200 sites will have the vaccine. The Food and Drug Administration approved the emergency authorization for Pfizer vaccine on Friday, marking an unprecedented pace of scientific development with a vaccine for a virus that was only identified earlier this year. And as the first shipments arrived in different states, governors celebrated.
Today, we will have shots going in arms. We will have healthcare workers getting vaccinated much sooner than anybody would have anticipated just 6 months ago.
It's going to take months before the vaccine hits critical mass. So this is the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's a long tunnel. And we need people to continue to do the right thing and the smart thing all through the holiday season.
But initial supplies of the vaccines are limited, so frontline health workers are prioritized. Older Americans living in healthcare long-term care facilities are receiving the vaccine next week. How the shots are administered is left up to individual hospitals. The vaccinations come at one of the darkest phases of the pandemic, with cases in the U.S. and many other countries soaring, and health experts still struggling against vaccine skepticism, lockdown fatigue, and uneven adherence to safety rules. The nation's top disease expert says he will also get his shot, also in public, sometime in the next few weeks.
Canada also begins a rollout of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, inoculating a care worker and an octogenarian first. Anita Quidangen was televised receiving the injection at a hospital in Toronto. Ontario, Canada's most populous province and one of the hardest hit by the pandemic, had 1,940 new cases and 23 deaths as of Monday. The province is expected to give its next doses to nursing home workers as a priority, according to media reports. Quebec was also scheduled to vaccinate staff and residents of 2 retirement homes in Montreal and Quebec City. In both provinces, most of the deaths in the first wave occurred in retirement homes. Canada, the third country to approve the Pfizer vaccine after the United Kingdom and Bahrain, is expected to receive up to 249,000 doses by the end of the month.
Today, I think the vaccine, as I mentioned earlier.
J'espère que tout le monde reçoit le vaccin parce que c'est important de continuer de vivre. Oui. Parce que vivre comme ça, c'est pas bon. J'ai resté dans ma chambre, ça fait maintenant 8 mois, sans sortir, même dans les couloirs.
Today my mother is getting it. She's in here, 96 years old, waiting her turn.
And what do you think about that?
I think it's absolutely fantastic. Very excited for her and everybody that's starting to get them.
I'm announcing that in the next few days we will vaccinate, as you know, I'm sure that you've been following this for a long time, around 5,000 people in Montreal and in Quebec with the first doses that we... But the good news as well is that we should be able to vaccinate over 50,000 people before the 4th of January. So it's just good news today.
News for Quebec. It's really good news for everybody across the country, but we also have to keep protecting each other. And one worry I know I would share with Minister Dubé is that Canadians think that this is just around the corner, that COVID-19 is over.
Today, I think the vaccine, as I mentioned earlier, the next few hours, avec nos employés, moi je laisserai passer quelques heures, là, puis je pense qu'on va voir comment les choses vont évoluer. Je me rappelle que dans d'autres...
Meanwhile, back to the U.S., now happening is the first COVID-19 vaccination in New Jersey as U.S. rollout begins. It's now happening at the University Hospital in Newark, New Jersey. And at the scene is El Aguilar joining us live. Hello, El.
Hi, Alma. After 300,000 deaths in the U.S. due to COVID-19, vaccine from Pfizer reaches New Jersey. And today, the New Jersey Governor, Phil Murphy, with officials from the University Hospital right behind me, will inspect its COVID-19 vaccine clinic here at the Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School, which is part of the University Hospital here in Newark, New Jersey. Inoculations of the first University Hospital healthcare heroes will be administered today in front of the governor. So right now, as you can see, there is no activity yet because we are waiting for the governor to arrive and meet with the officials from the hospital. Now, University Hospital here in Newark is the first in New Jersey to receive the vaccine. And from what we have learned, every day they will inoculate about 600 employees, healthcare employees, just for this facility alone. There are 50 hospitals so far in New Jersey that will receive vaccines from Pfizer in the coming days, and they're all preparing now to inoculate first the doctors and then the other healthcare workers. We talked to someone earlier here who didn't want to be on camera, but from what we've learned, they will start inoculating those healthcare workers who are on the COVID-19 floors or who are treating or near the COVID patients. But the other ones will be later.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, Elle, can you tell us, can you run through the procedure on how this will be done?
Okay, the vaccine, from what we have learned, once you are inoculated, you will stay in the facility for at least, in the location for at least 15 minutes to see if there is any side effect. In that way, if there is any side effect, it will be treated right away. But we're hoping that there will be no, side effects on this. And then after that, after 21 days, you would have to come back to get the second shot of the vaccine.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Elle, for your updates there, and looking forward to this developing story as you give us an update on how this will go. Thank you very much, Elle.
For Eagle News, Elle Aguilar, Newark, New Jersey, we live in interesting times.
Staying in the U.S., Joe Biden said Monday that U.S. democracy proved resilient against Donald Trump's abuse of power after the Electoral College confirmed him as the next president. In his first extended attack on Trump since the election, Biden said in his hometown of Wilmington, Delaware, that the president and his allies refused to respect the will of the people. Watch this.
California, the most populous state in these United States, will be formally casting its votes for the winner of our state's popular vote, Joseph R. Biden, and vice presidential running mate, California's own Kamala Harris.
This legal maneuver was an effort by elected officials and one group of states to try to get the Supreme Court to wipe out the votes of more than 20 million Americans in other states, and to hand the presidency to a candidate who lost the Electoral College, lost the popular vote, and lost each and every one of the states whose votes they were trying to reverse. It's a position so extreme, we've never seen it before. A position that refused to respect the will of the people, refused to respect the rule of law, and refused to honor our Constitution.
Trump maintained his stream of threats and unsubstantiated claims on Twitter Monday, citing massive voter fraud and declaring that certifying election results would be a severely punishable crime. The legal Electoral College vote, however, puts an official stamp on what voters already decided on November 3rd. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell was quiet on the issue Monday, but a number of senators said the time has come. Although I supported President Trump, the Electoral College vote today makes clear that Joe Biden is now president-elect, tweeted a Republican Senator Rob Portman, signaling the changing tide. Ahead of Biden's inauguration, one major formality remains. When Congress, presided over by Vice President Mike Pence, opens up and counts the electoral votes on January 6th.
Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday congratulated Joe Biden on winning the U.S. presidential election in November. He said he hoped the countries could set aside their differences to promote global security. President Putin wished the U.S. president-elect every success and said that, quote, "For my part, I am ready for collaboration and contacts with you." That is according to a Kremlin statement. The Russian president was one of the last remaining leaders of major world countries to have held back on congratulating Biden. In his congratulatory telegram to Biden, President Putin also said that their countries bear special responsibility for global security and stability. He said he was confident that Russia and the U.S. could, quote, "despite their differences, really contribute to solving many problems and challenges that the world is currently facing." Now, Mr. Biden is expected to take a tougher stand against Russia than outgoing U.S. President Donald Trump. Biden, during the campaign, slammed President Trump for having, quote, embraced so many autocrats around the world, starting with, quote, Vladimir Putin. Take a short break. Eagle News. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
This portion is brought to you by Canreef Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
The successful development of TPLEX, or Tarlac-Pangasinan-La Union Expressway in 2009, a 4-lane toll road that extends from Tarlac City to Rosario, La Union, with an additional approved extension of 56 kilometers all the way to San Juan, La Union. This is expected to reduce travel time to Baguio and other provinces in northern Luzon. Realizing the vision of creating a better world for Filipinos fueled the team's focus.
Welcome back to the news. Singapore will allow business travelers and visiting officials from all countries to enter from next month as the financial hub seeks to recover from a coronavirus-induced downturn. The Trade Ministry said under the new arrangements, a limited number of travelers can apply for stays up to 14 days from mid-January. Singapore already had arrangements allowing in selected visitors from countries including China and South Korea, but the new scheme marks a significant easing of travel curbs. There are strict conditions, however, for those wishing to visit the city-state. Travelers must undergo virus tests before leaving their home country, on arrival in Singapore, and regularly during their stay. They must reside and conduct meetings at locations selected by the government. Arrangements are being made for visitors to hold meetings with their guests in specially designed meeting rooms. These rooms are outfitted with airtight glass panels to reduce the risk of transmission. The announcement came a day after Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong warned that the city-state had no choice but to ease restrictions or risk losing its status as a global hub.
Meanwhile, Berliners are rushing to non-essential shops ahead of their closure on Wednesday, December 16th. Germany announced a partial lockdown from Wednesday with non-essential shops and schools to close in a bid to halt and, quote, exponential growth in infections. The restrictions agreed by Chancellor Angela Merkel and regional leaders will apply through the holidays until January 10.
Meanwhile, Italy on Saturday became the European country with the highest pandemic toll, its new total of 64,036 deaths overtaking Britain, according to an AFP tally. The Italian Health Ministry said that 649 people had succumbed to the virus in the previous 24 hours and that 19,903 new cases had been diagnosed. Italy was the first European country to suffer a wave of infections earlier this year and imposed a nationwide lockdown against what then was a new and terrifying deadly virus. Italy's National Medical Association said Friday that a total of 251 doctors have now died from the virus. Among the most recent was Francesco Gasparini, a 67-year-old anesthetist who came out of retirement to help with the crisis. If the toll keeps rising as it has in recent weeks, the so-called second wave could become as deadly as the first, which saw close on 35,000 fatalities towards the end of July. The death rate for 100,000 inhabitants in Italy at 104 as of December 10 is one of the highest in the world, but the reasons why remain contested. Italy's 60 million strong population is older than most in Europe, and official figures show the median age of patients is over 80.
To other news now, fire erupted in a retirement home in central Russia overnight. Now, investigators say the fire killed 11 people who were trapped as the blaze swept through the small wooden building. Russia's investigative committee said it had opened a criminal investigation into possible negligence at the home in the Bashkortostan region. The nursing home in the village of Ishboldino was a one-story wooden building with a small attic. According to investigators, the home was registered as a non-profit organization that provided charity for the elderly. But a local official told the Interfax news agency that it did not have the legal right to provide people with overnight accommodation. Accidental fires and blasts in residential buildings are relatively common in Russia as a result of aging infrastructure and non-compliance with safety standards.
In other news, a Japanese man dubbed the Twitter Killer was sentenced to death by a Tokyo court on Tuesday for murdering and dismembering 9 people he met on social media. Takahiro Shiraishi, 30 years old, admitted killing and butchering his young victims, all but one of whom were women. Authorities found 9 dismembered bodies with as many as 240 bone parts stashed in coolers and toolboxes and had been sprinkled with cat litter in a bid to hide the evidence. Shiraishi targeted social media users who posted about taking their own lives. He told them he could help them in their plans or even die alongside them. His victims were aged between 15 to 26 years old. His lawyers had argued he should receive a prison sentence rather than be executed because his victims had expressed suicidal thoughts on social media and so had consented to die. But a judge dismissed that argument and handed down the death penalty over the 2017 crimes. The judge called his crimes cunning and cruel, according to public broadcaster NHK. Japan has the highest suicide rate among the group of 7 industrialized nations, with more than 20,000 people taking their lives annually. Numbers have fallen since a peak in 2003, but there have been signs that suicide rates are rising again in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic.
And Boko Haram on Tuesday claimed the abduction of hundreds of students in northwestern Nigeria in what would be its first attack in the region since it launched a jihadist uprising more than a decade ago. Boko Haram and its rival, the Islamic State in West Africa Province, or ISWAP group, have until now waged an insurgency in the northeast of the country and neighboring Cameroon, Chad, and Niger. The governor of Katsina State, Aminu Bello Masari, said late Monday that the abductors have made contacts with the government, and talks are ongoing to ensure their safety and return to their respective families. The number of missing students remains unclear. Military spokesman General John Enenche told Channel TV on Monday that 333 pupils were unaccounted for.
We still have updates for you. Please don't go away.
This portion is brought to you by RJK Services Manpower Agency Corporation.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson will travel to India next month in his first major bilateral visit to another country since taking power last year, his office said on Tuesday. During the trip, Johnson will invite India to join next year's G7 summit, which Britain is hosting as one of 3 guest countries alongside South Korea and Australia. Watch this.
And it's very much with that in mind that I'm pleased that Prime Minister Johnson has invited Prime Minister Modi to join the UK-hosted G7 summit next year. And Prime Minister Johnson has also gratefully accepted the very generous invitation to attend India's Republic Day celebrations in January, which is a great honour. What we want to do is take that to another level, working towards agreeing an enhanced trade partnership next year, which itself will be, we hope, a stepping stone towards a future free trade agreement. And I think that can unlock huge opportunities for British and Indian businesses, lowering barriers in areas like food and drink, healthcare and life sciences, IT, data, chemicals and financial services. So I think some exciting possibilities ahead.
It is important that India and UK strengthen their collaboration to hasten their post-COVID economic recovery. This has many facets, including promoting greater trade and investment, fostering innovation, and facilitating the flow of talent.
Prime Minister Johnson will be only the second British leader since Indian independence to attend the annual Republic Day parade in New Delhi as guest of honor after John Major in 1993. Johnson's office highlighted the 2 countries' burgeoning trade and investment relationship, which it said is worth £24 billion annually and supports more than 500,000 jobs. It noted their increased cooperation during the coronavirus pandemic, with India's large pharmaceutical sector supplying more than half of the world's vaccines. At least 1 billion doses of Britain's Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine are being manufactured at the Serum Institute in the western Indian city of Pune.
Staying in India, farmers are rallying against the agriculture law reform on the Singhu border, northwest of New Delhi, after a weekend that saw protests against the market reform laws, intensifying with attempts to block major highways. The new laws seek to deregulate India's enormous agriculture sector by allowing farmers to sell their produce to private buyers beyond government-run wholesale markets, where farmers are assured a minimum price for their crops. But the farmers say the laws threaten their livelihoods and will only benefit big corporations and leaving growers at the mercy of a free market. Last week, a group of opposition leaders, including Congress leader Rahul Gandhi, met with India's President Ram Nath Kovind and told him the laws should be revoked. India's farming sector is vast and troubled. It provides a livelihood to nearly 70% of the country's 1.3 billion people and accounts for around 15% of the $2.7 trillion economy.
In other news, Australia decried China's reported ban on its coal exports as an obvious breach of World Trade Organization's rules as tensions between the 2 countries flared again. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said Beijing had yet to confirm state media reports that Australia's multi-billion-dollar coal exports are now subject to an informal ban. Nationalist state-run tabloid The Global Times said Sunday that Chinese power plants are being steered toward buying their own or their coal domestically, as well as from other countries other than Australia. We're seeking clarification on this, Morrison said, although ministerial-level contacts between the 2 countries are said to be non-existent. China's foreign ministry on Tuesday did not confirm or deny the ban and instead accused Australian politicians of playing the victim to continuously insinuate accusations against China. China's import restrictions have left hundreds of millions of tons of Australian coal anchored off the Chinese coast in a deepening trade dispute with Beijing. Relations between the 2 countries have been strained by Australia's position on China's territorial dispute pursuits. Perceptions Australia has unfairly targeted China with its foreign interference regime, and Scott Morrison's call for weapons inspector-style powers to investigate the source of global disease outbreaks. At least 13 Australian sectors have been subjected to tariffs or some form of disruption, including barley, beef, copper, cotton, lobsters, sugar, timber, tourism, universities, wine, wheat, and wool.
In other business news, the International Energy Agency, or IEA, trimmed its global oil demand forecast as the massive coronavirus pandemic hit the aviation industry. Will likely be worse than expected next year. For this year, total oil demand will fall by 8.8 million barrels per day to 91.2 million barrels per day, reflecting a marginal downward revision to the estimate given in its last monthly report in November. For 2021, the IEA said it had cut its oil demand growth estimate by 170,000 barrels per day to 5.7 million barrels per day, mainly because of another downgrade for jet fuel kerosene demand. Aviation fuel demand is not expected to recover quickly as governments intend to keep in place border closures and travel restrictions until a vaccine is widely available.
Russia's next-generation MC-21 plane completed its first test flight using a Russian-made engine, State Corporation Rostec said Tuesday, after the aircraft's rollout was delayed by U.S. sanctions. The medium-range plane's test flight from the Siberian city of Irkutsk lasted 1 hour 25 minutes. The jet was fitted with a fully Russian-produced PD-14 engine developed after U.S. sanctions barred deliveries of essential parts for the project to Russia. The MC-21 plane made its first test flight in May 2017 and was due to enter into circulation at the end of 2018 until the sanctions forced a delay. Washington imposed the sanctions barring U.S. companies from exporting products to around a dozen Russian companies in 2018, mainly over Moscow's annexation of Crimea in 2014. The MC-21 is now scheduled to come into service in 2021 as the global aviation industry suffers severe setbacks because of the coronavirus pandemic.
Scientists in Japan said they were left speechless when they saw how much asteroid dust was inside a capsule delivered by the Hayabusa 2 space probe in an unprecedented mission. The Japanese probe collected surface dust and pristine material last year from the asteroid Ryugu, around 300 million kilometers or 200 million miles away, during 2 daring phases of its 6-year mission. Now, this month, it dropped off a capsule containing the samples that landed in the Australian desert before being transported to Japan. Scientists at the Japanese Space Agency JAXA removed the screws to the capsule's inner container, having already found a small amount of asteroid dust in the outer shell. And JAXA scientist Hirotaka Sawada said he was, quote, speechless when he opened it, and he said it was more than what they expected. Scientists hope the material will shed light on the formation of the universe, and the scientists have not yet revealed if the material inside is equal to or perhaps even more than the 0.1 grams they had said they hope to discover. Half of Hayabusa 2 samples will be shared between JAXA, U.S. Space Agency, NASA, and other international organizations. And the rest will be kept for future study as advances are made in analytic technology. But work is not over for the probe, which will now begin an extended mission targeting 2 new asteroids.
Nestled among the mountains in southwest China, the world's largest radio telescope signals Beijing's ambitions as a global center for scientific research. The 500-meter aperture spherical telescope, or FAST, the only significant instrument of its kind after the collapse of another telescope in Puerto Rico this month, is about to open its doors for foreign astronomers to use. It hoped to attract the world's top scientific talent. Work on the FAST, as it's called, began in 2011 and it started full operations in January this year, working mainly to capture the radio signals emitted by celestial bodies, in particular pulsars, rapidly rotating dead stars. The 500-meter giant satellite dish is easily the world's largest, covering the area of 30 football pitches, and cost 1.1 billion yuan, or about $175 million, to build, as well as displacing thousands of villagers to make room for it. China is pouring billions into its military-run space program and has published a plan to become, by 2035, a world leader in artificial intelligence, space, clean energy, and robotics. China has been rapidly boosting its scientific credentials to become less reliant on foreign technology.
And we'll take a short break. Eagle News will be right back.
This portion is brought to you by Kubert, an expert in air conditioning and electromechanical. Also engaged in structural, electrical, fire protection, plumbing, and sanitary services. Kubert, your ultimate NEPS and air conditioning solutions.
Sa panahon na laganap ang mga sakit, katuwang nyo ang BMEG Premium at Protect Plus Gold. Gawa sa state-of-the-art facilities ang BMEG Premium Feeds. Kaya ito ay safe, sanitized, and hygienic. Walang dalang sakit. Certified, malinis, sariwa at sigurado. At para malinis ang paligid, gumamit ng Protect Plus Gold. Isang safe broad-spectrum disinfectant na pumapatay ng mga virus, bacteria at fungi. BMEG Premium at Protect Plus Gold. Sama-sama sa laban, walang iwanan.
Gusto namin maging happy ang mga viewers sa amin pagpapatawa, sa amin pag-entertain, iba-ibang segments and games.
Rumarampa! Lumalagpas! Lumarampa!
Batanes! Pamamas? Batanes!
The jackpot prize of 58,000 pesos ang tamang sagot na hinahanap natin.
3, 2, 1!
Happy peeps, on the Happy Time stage, please welcome...
Magandang dilag sa isip mo, aman mo.
Thank you po. Ay, maraming salamat po.
Taos-puso po kami nagpapasalamat sa malaking tulong na inabot niyo po sa amin.
Please watch Happy Time every day, Monday to Friday, dito lang sa Net 25. Happy Time, Happy Time, Happy.
Tokyo's governor said she can see no circumstances under which the virus-postponed 2020 Olympics will be canceled. This despite rising coronavirus infections in Japan and continued public skepticism. Take a look.
Are there any circumstances that you can imagine that you would support a cancellation of the game?
それはありません。はい。東京のコロナ対策がしっかり行われないと、じゃあ4年後のパリはどうなるんでしょうか。 まず東京で成功させていかなければパリにも大きな影響を与えることになります。で、世界の方々はこのコロナのウイルスに打ち勝つその証としての東京大会、そしてその後冬季の北京大会、さらにはその後のフランス大会、パリ大会につながっていく。国民や都民の皆さんは現在を見ている。私たちは将来に備えてのことを考えています。で、そのことは人々はこのコロナ対策がしっかり行われていくと、むしろ希望を求めるということで、そのことについて確信を持っています。
Now, Japan is currently battling a third wave of coronavirus infections. Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga on Monday urged people to reconsider travel during the holiday period and halting a controversial domestic tourism campaign over the new year. Japan has seen a comparatively small outbreak of the virus. The country has fewer than 2,600 deaths reported since the country's first case was identified back in January. However, it faces particular scrutiny because of the ongoing preparations for the Games, now due to open on July 23 next year. A 54-page report released this month outlined the measures organizers say will keep athletes and spectators safe. The measures range from tests before arrival to bans on cheering loudly in venues. And the arrival of new vaccines has bolstered their confidence, although inoculation will not be mandatory for athletes or spectators.
An alligator believed to have belonged to Adolf Hitler that died aged 84 has undergone taxidermy and put on display in Moscow. The Darwin Museum said the alligator named Saturn was put on public display several months after the Moscow Zoo donated his remains. Born in the United States in 1936, Saturn was moved to the Berlin Zoo, where he escaped on November 23, 1943, after a bombing raid that killed several of his fellow reptiles. In 1946, he was found by British soldiers who handed him over to the Soviet authorities. His whereabouts during the intervening 3 years are a mystery, the Moscow Zoo said when Saturn died May 24. When Saturn was brought to Moscow in July 1946, rumors began circulating that he had been part of Adolf Hitler's personal collection. Museums in Russia, however, are closed until January 16th as part of efforts to slow the spread of the coronavirus.
And thousands of people turned their heads to the sky to watch a solar eclipse that lasted around 2 minutes as southern Chile and Argentina were plunged into darkness. Heavy rain had threatened to prevent the stargazers in Chile from seeing the eclipse. But at the last moment, the clouds parted just enough for the phenomenon to be partially visible. Take a look.
Entonces es un eclipse que viene bien para ver cada uno qué quiere dejar atrás. Este año fue un año de mucho aprendizaje, un aprendizaje muy difícil, pero también es como un momento de cara al 2021, decir qué queremos dejar atrás, qué queremos limpiar en nuestra vida.
Fue hermoso, único. La verdad es que nadie tenía mucha esperanza de verlo por el clima y las nubes, pero algo único la verdad porque se despejó justo, un milagro casi, y todos fuimos afortunados de verlo.
verdad que es lindo poder, a pesar de que tenemos esto puesto, poder venir con toda libertad sin tener que andar acreditando nada. Y nada, poder disfrutar de esto, la verdad que es maravilloso, es sanador.
Beautiful pictures there.
Yes, really exciting.
Yeah, I'd probably have the same reaction if I see like a waterfall or a butterfly after 9 months of lockdown. Everyone's very excited to see something nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm CJ Hero. Please join us again tomorrow.
And we'll see you back tomorrow. At the end of the day, as I always say, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.